Alright, Jared Randall here. Thought probably I'd be giving a little bit of an update today. I wasn't sure what it would be about, and yeah, I just got a lot of stuff coming in as of the last hour or so. And yeah, so appropriate, this is a Freya's Day, Friday. That seems to be a day when I particularly get a lot of downloads coming in, for lack of a better term. Don't actually like that term. It's too mechanical. But as something I experience as something more organic feeling. But in any case, it's very connected to water energy. Very connected to water energy. Especially, I would say, Pisces energy, very, very much an energy of knowing, of being in an environment and just knowing that environment. It's not so much about thinking about this, right? Or puzzling it. It's being in it, being in the knowledge, being in the knowing. And so a lot of this knowing comes, or as I should say, is that the foundation of it is a knowing of Atlantis and Lemuria. And I have knowings connected to both of these. And this gets into past life stuff, and I'm not going to get into details of that because it's not that important at this moment. But it's, and I don't know why this is important to say, but it's part of what's coming out, so I'm going to say it. Druids are of Atlantis, shamans are of Lemuria. That's what's coming out. That is one of the main knowings, and that's not so much a new knowing, and I wouldn't say that others haven't caught on to that or haven't expressed that before, but the shamanistic tradition, and this also leads into the Brahmins and Hindu tradition, and then from there into Buddhism and so on. And there's a lot of interchange once you get beyond the days of Atlantis and Lemuria both collapsing literally into the waters. In any case, the Druidic is of Atlantis, and so one of the key things right now that's coming through is that we are at another big splitting point of timelines, and that it's up to each of us which timeline this splinter of our consciousness is going to experience, right? And this is kind of a really big thing, and I'm going to try and sum it up in a very quick way. If you want to get in touch with this more personally, I highly recommend a practice of ritual bathing. Highly recommend a practice of ritual bathing. Highly recommend adding some salt to the water, adding fragrance to the water that you're drawn to. There's no right answer with these things. I like lavender. That speaks to me. That puts me into a state of relaxation, which I think is probably the most important thing, at least for me personally. But just being in the water, soaking in the water, being submerged into the water, neck deep is important. That will allow you to receive a lot more than you. There's only so much these bodies can take in. When we're submerged in water, there's a type of energy that comes in, and it's very Atlantean. And one of the things I've been given most recently, and this is a new thing for me, is as Jared, although I know that I've experienced this in another life, which is there was an Atlantean practice of very special baths that one could soak in, and these baths were very connected by how they were built. They were built with stones from other worlds, and so they were very energetically connected, very entangled with other places, and so they cast a much wider net, if you will, of the information that could come in when one soaked in them. We don't have that, but what we do have is our own bodies, and our own bodies have bits and pieces of all that heritage. And we have a lot more of it than we think, and this is one of the reasons why I caution like being too focused on oh, I'm a starseed from this place but not that place. Well, no, you probably have a lot of different things in you. What's happening is we go from a place from childhood where we're this blank slate. We come in with kind of a purpose, kind of a plan or an idea of what this incarnation is going to be for us. But we get here, and very quickly the possibilities for what we can do and how we can do it start getting winnowed down. And it's interesting, that word has been coming up the last day, the word winnowed, and that's a word that's it's just a very like that word has this idea of things just dropping away, right? Just dropping away, and then what's left? What's left is what you keep. And so this is one of the reasons why we do inner child work, is because that child mourns all that loss, right? But also that loss is necessary. Like, the inner child needs to understand that loss is necessary, because we can't be everything in one incarnation. We have to pick and choose, and this is where the shadow comes from. And so there's this idea that shadow work is about getting in touch with your inner demons, and it's all evil darkness, and that's not how I see it. I see it as all that you've chosen not to do and be, and you mourn that. There's bits and pieces of you that wanted to come out in this life, that you were attached to in some way, and you need to grieve that, and you need to work with that, and some of it needs to come back out because you've lost it and the world kicked it out of you, and you need it now. Right? That's shadow work. It's bringing out things, it's grieving things, and then it's putting it all kind of to rest, and it's telling that inner child that, hey, it's okay. You are what you are now, and what you are is beautiful, and what you need to be. All right, so this all leads to how things really work when we're dealing with timelines, timeline jumping, quantum shifting, if you will. And as I said, a few moments ago, there's a big shift coming. That is clear. We're up against a shift point, and there's going to be some radical differences to what people experience on different timelines. And I shouldn't even say that. We're all going to experience it all. There's versions of us on all the timelines, for the most part. On some timelines we die sooner, right? We don't exist anymore in that timeline, right? Something happened, that's a thing too. So on some timelines there are people who aren't here on the timeline that we're currently aware of, who are there on a different timeline, right? There's a timeline where Tom Petty's still alive, and I'm not. And maybe that's just as sad, because Tom Petty doesn't have me around to listen to the new music he would have made, right? For instance, okay? And so this is not a fear thing about, oh, what timeline am I going to get to, and I got to get to the right one, and and there's only one good one, and that's not how it works, because our inner child has experienced all this winnowing, all this timeline work is really what it is. We experience it as things dropping away from our being and the possibilities of our lives. But there's still a version of us out there on other timelines that are experiencing those things. They're not experiencing what we're experiencing, because they're winnowing other energies than what we've winnowed, right? That other like the idea of winnowing is literally to throw with a pitchfork or something, throw wheat up into the air after it's been cut, harvested, and the wind comes by. So it's very, very good imagery for this time of year, right? The autumn is coming and harvest time. And you throw the wheat up into the air, and the wind blows away the chaff, the lighter, stocky things, and the heavier grain pieces come back down and can be gathered, right? This is a non-mechanized way of harvesting the kernel of the wheat, right? So again, this winnowing isn't bad, but as we're coming up against this timeline shift, what's coming through very strongly is that we're going to experience what we've decided to experience in the particular mode of being that we are right now, right? From this standpoint. And it's okay. It's okay. It's going to be okay. So to remain in love, to remain in a sense of peace, to be looking for the light, right? To not get pulled down into darkness, to not be pulled into energies of division, especially division, okay? To be looking for ways to be with other people, to be coming together with self first, which allows us to come together with others, okay? Yeah, so just kind of adding into this message a little bit, and the rain has started here, which we needed the rain where I am. So again, a lot of water energy here today, and definitely some air energy coming in, and but yeah, in terms of navigating timelines, jumping timelines, and so on. Just the overall message is to learn contentment with where you're at, and to keep a vision of where you're going. No matter what you're kind of experiencing in the moment, or maybe for a particular day, or a particular hour here and there, is, where are you headed? And another thing coming in is that at a time like this, when it's, timelines are shifting, and we're all kind of picking and choosing where we're going to fall among the possibilities, is you may really hit a patch of tiredness and weariness, sleepiness, and this could be accompanied by dreaming, pretty intense dreaming, pretty vivid dreams. And for those of you, I'm assuming if you're watching this, then you're probably involved in this, right? Understand that from your perspective, you're always creating the world that you're going to see next, right? You're always dreaming it up. You're always imagining it. You're always envisioning it, and you're always moving towards it. From your perspective, it's as if you've conjured it up. And one of the ways that we do this is in the dream state. And for those of us who are here specifically to be raising the vibration of the planet, and I don't like that term so much, raising the vibration. It's not so much raising the vibration. It's tuning the vibration. It's overall tuning things upward, and hitting those the higher frequency versions of ourselves, and specifically of all our chakra centers. And specifically right now, this is going to be hitting the third eye a lot, and that's what I'm experiencing, and that's what I'm hearing, and what I'm just knowing in this moment. And so if you're having vivid dreams, you're interacting with these timelines, you're sorting through You may be having like dreams of kind of like pathfinding dreams, like where am I supposed to go, trying to find your way through something, dreams of walking, of being in spaces where you're walking, you're moving, you're picking paths, and, you know, choosing paths, potentially choosing doorways, potentially not choosing doorways, seeing doorways and then not going through them. All kinds of different things like this could be coming up. And again, this is from your personal perspective, this can feel like down the road, sort of, there can be this aha moment of, oh, I picked this, I chose this, I conjured this reality around me. Just the thing that's coming on, the thing that's coming in is a more advanced realization, if you will, is that all the possibilities are there. What you're really doing is picking one, right? Is tuning to the one that you're going to experience, that this version of you is going to experience. There are many versions of you. There are many versions of me, all the versions, and they're tuned to all these different frequencies. And the best way to understand this, maybe not the best way, but the way that's coming through that's helpful in this moment, is again tied to this idea of this original primal child that you were, that I was when we incarnated, that slowly gets distorted. And this is like the term distorted has this sort of negative connotation but that's not intended here. This isn't a negative thing. It's like distortion in grunge rock, right? An alternative rock that came in during the alternative rock scene, right? Like, we can distort our guitars, and we can distort our sounds, and we can achieve a different sound that way. It's just a different sound. It's a different frequency, and it's chosen. So it's intended. It's not bad. It's not negative. It does exclude, right? It's any time we're choosing a frequency, we're also not choosing some other frequency, right? When we choose a timeline, we're not choosing another timeline. So for the particular version of us that we are, that we're aware of, that we're conscious of, those things now slip down into our shadow as things we've not chosen, and become, part of our unconscious. Can still be dipped into, right? And that is, again, the shadow work can be seen not so much as, again, dealing with your darkness in kind of a negative way, but instead like the paths that haven't been chosen, that have been submerged down into that not chosen path, right? And there are energies that lie down there, and you may be finding yourself still interacting with some of those things. You may be finding that you have more and more capacity to draw on those other versions of you, on those not unlived but unexperienced from your point of view, from this current you, right? You are a distortion of you. You are a distortion of that child that came in this primal way with all these possibilities. And so much of it has not happened and will not happen from your point of view here, right? In the 3D, 4D version of you that you're experiencing, that you are conscious of. But another version of you on another timeline is experiencing that. And there are interactions between these, especially as you become more aware of a fifth dimensional perspective, right? The fourth dimensional perspective is you dealing with your own timeline, right? And this that you're conscious of, right? Your childhood, your future that you're headed towards, right? The fifth dimensional perspective is all these other timelines that are possible and indeed have happened on different timelines that some other version of you has experienced. And timelines are threading together right now. A lot is coming back in together and being unified. So you may be experiencing even memories that you've forgotten that could feel like memories, especially childhood memories. And you may have this sense of, I'm not sure I lived that. And that could be because another version of you did. And that version of you and the version of you that you're consciously aware of are coming back in together right now. Things are coming back in together. We've gone through decades of all this splitting, division, literal divisiveness. That is the draconian energy at work, right? The draconian energy is all about dividing the timelines up as much as possible, dividing people from each other, having divisiveness in the world, emphasizing polarities. Instead of experiencing polarity but then navigating the polarity kind of this way, right? Things come out and then they come back in. It's just constant splitting, because the draconian energies can harvest all that. The more those energies can split timelines, then there's multiple versions of everything that they can siphon negative polarity energies off of. And what we're doing right now is we're healing the planet, we're healing the planetary consciousness, we're healing our own consciousness. And as we do that, we become more and more aware of the fifth dimensional awareness, which is awareness of all these timelines. And as we become more aware of the timelines, then we can negotiate those timelines, and we can see how they can come back together. And we're it's not something we have to try to do. It's just an awareness. And that awareness automatically just starts bringing everything back together. And that's what's happening. Again, some of us are here to experience darker things, if you will. Denser realities, explosive realities. And some of us are more tuned to be more involved in that everything coming back together. And both are going to exist and continue to exist. But there's definitely a kind of reckoning going on. And you know, a lot of psychics have been saying this, that there's this splitting, an overall split, and that's what we're coming up against right now. And some of us are going to experience one thing, and some of us are going to experience more of a negative polarity, if you will. And some of us are going to experience more of a positive polarity, and it's because of where you're headed, what you're deciding to experience. And there's not a right or wrong here, and nobody is lost. Nobody is lost. It's just a different experience. And there's going to be a version of me that goes down the more negative polarity path, and there's going to be a version of me that's going down more of the positive polarity path. What I see happening is in each one of those threads are being brought back together, so that it's more like, instead of all these different threads going all these different ways, instead there's these two overall paths, if you will, or timelines, or collections of timelines that are merging. And what we get is out in the future, quite a ways out in the future, even that finally coming back in together. We're a ways from that. But this is a big one. This is a big one still. This is a big merging, even though there's also the separation. There's a lot of merging going on of timelines and energies. And it's very tied to the solar energies and everything that the solar maximum. If you've been watching, there's been a lot of solar flare activity. It's very tied to that. That is where the energy comes from for all this. We've been absorbing it, and it's fueling everything that's happening. And there's a lot also in astrology that enables certain energies to flow, energies being released that have been bound up or pent up for a long time. So again, a very intense time coming, and just understand that you're choosing what you're going to experience based on your overall outlook. And again, that sense of love, peace, light, and even if you are overall choosing to experience the more negative polarity experiences, you still want to be aiming right at the overall experience of love, and honestly, the greater light is going to shine out on that negative polarity path. So if you're a person who is here to especially experience that and to go in that direction, again, in the consciousness, the distortion of your inner child that you are right now, if that's what you're aiming for, there's going to be opportunities to shine out all the brighter. It's like being Frodo in the Lord of the Rings, right? You could be the version of Frodo who sits at home and has a great old time, living it up with the hobbits, and all kinds of, all the events of, the Lord of the Rings don't happen for you, and you just live in this great place called the Shire, and you live among nature, and you grow your crops, and you smoke your weed, and it's good, and that's fine. There's another version of, but you could be the version of Frodo and his friends that go off and experience all kinds of darkness. But within that, so much light is shed also. And it's not to say that one is better than the other. It's a different experience. And that's really what's coming up right now, is that we're at a major splitting point there. And yeah, I think it's really up to each individual. What is your heart aiming at that you want to experience? And that's where you'll end up. And again, from your own experience, it can be like, I created this. And it's not going to be, it can be on the world stage, right? On this sort of global, if you will, this global perspective. But where it hits home the most is, especially if you're choosing this, I want to be Frodo who just stays in the Shire and everything's just golden. Where you're going to see that show up is in your personal relationships. Like, that timeline is all about you going through a time where there's people around you that are just exactly who you want around you, and you just experience the glow of their love towards you and your love towards them, in this kind of way. And in the sort of, again, the more negative polarity version of this, you're going to experience that, but it's going to be different. It's going to be more like brothers in arms, warriors, and who have each other's backs, and things get kind of dark and dense, but you find the people that you stand with, and you stand to the end, and you do great things. despite all the darkness. And yeah, it's, I don't know, big splitting here. And whichever version of that you experience, just understand you're going to still be connected to that other version of you. And there's actually lots of variations on this, okay? It's not just two. It's not just a negative and a positive. It's a lot of versions of each. And again, within that, there's a lot of coming together of each. And then way down in the future, coming back together. And all of it is about healing. It's about healing the planet. It's about healing the planetary consciousness. And just a last word then about healing, because the principle that I've received in terms of healing over the past year and a half or so is the principle of the wound is healed, the wound burns. And this is how we can have a sense, especially, of the sort of polarity we're not experiencing by this, right? Even though a wound is healed for us, there's still a burning sensation, a spot, and this can be bodily, right? Where even though it's healed, there's a wound that burns. I have such a wound, and it's a spot where I have a memory of it, right? And it's healed, but the sense of a burning, which is almost like a cauterization of the wound, right? Like, I know where it is in my body. I can sense it. I can feel it. And this kind of holds true for any healing, right? That is, if you're a healer, you can heal just by force of will, really. When it gets right down to it, that's how healing works. It's force of will. It's the type of force of will. It doesn't matter what you do, whether you take a medication, whether you say magic words, whether you concoct a potion, whether you just, do kind of literal mind over matter. And this is coming up a lot in my daily life. I've experienced myself healing myself. I've experienced myself working with others to heal others, and I'm seeing others heal themselves, okay? The healing itself is quite immediate, but the wound can burn for a while, if that makes sense. And the wound can be reopened. And the wound, even though the underlying condition can be healed energetically, we can re-injure, say, a wound. So, for instance, I can point to a number of different things in my own body. So let's just talk about healing my knee, for instance. Okay, I one day have a bum knee, and I do some energy healing on that knee, and it feels better. But there will still be some lingering, what I know is there's an actual injury in there. As a healer, I know there's an injury in there, and I can heal that injury, but it takes time for the symptoms to go away, right? It takes time for the soreness, for the inflammation to go down. And in the meantime, even though I've done this healing, if I do something crazy with that knee and I hurt it again, then the process can start over. I can immediately heal it again, but then it's starting over with the bodily part of getting the inflammation out and so on. And again, so there's this sense of the wound's healed, but the wound still burns. How does this relate to this idea of these two sort of timelines splitting apart? each one is going to take certain wounds that the other one won't have, and it's going to heal certain wounds that it's suited to healing. But there's going to be a sense of burning, a sense of sensation that we might experience, that the other one's healing a wound that we are feeling. In a sense, we're still feeling the burn, even though the other timeline is healing that wound. In a sense, we're also getting the healing, and we're going to notice that by some burning sensation. And it's literally what it is. It's the movement of spirit. It's the fire energy. It's the wands energy. It's magic. It's spirit. So I think this is important because we may be having sensations that we're not sure where it's coming from. And this can be a different timeline where another version of ourselves is healing something that we're not healing on this timeline, and yet that wound is burning, if that makes sense. Okay? So it's just to put that out there because, again, if you're watching this, then you're probably super sensitive. You're super empathic. You're super intuitive. And these things may be coming up. Okay? So it's just to kind of do some explanation of what you're probably experiencing, what's probably going on. Again, highly recommend ritual bathing. Soak in the tub. Go to a body of water and soak. And it's going to help. It's going to help with all these things going on. We've gone through a period of time where the energies kind of came down, and it was kind of a rest, exhale, and so on. It's going to be intense for a couple of months, at least, is what I'm getting. It's going to be intense for a couple of months. So any of those practices that maybe you felt like, oh, I don't need that, could be candle burning. It could be just meditating. It could be, I have, various little shrines set up where I go to sit and meditate and work with different energies, different entities, to just kind of go, okay, what do I need to deal with? And letting the energies move and equalize. And so these things are gonna, if you felt like you haven't needed that for a while, expect to maybe need to renew some of these practices, and they may change a bit because, again, the energies are going to be different. This is the last thing I guess I'll leave you with is to not get too focused on a particular ritual as if this is how I did it before, so therefore I have to do it this way because that's how it works. Well, no, that's how it worked at that point in time with the particular consciousness you had in that moment, with all the different vibrations around you of the reality that you were in that very moment, because that's how things are in the 3D 4D, right? We're still living in the 3D 4D. That's where this bodily reality is based, right? In the earth energy, in the earthiness of it, of matter, of light crystallized, if you will, light solidified, and it changes. So what you did before may not, it's not that it won't work, but be open to it changing, be open to it shifting. And it's not about, so for instance, there's a sort of move to go back to the old ways and find the old spells, the old words, and that's not bad. There's helpful stuff in there, right? But it's not about rote recitation of old things. It's not about finding old books and finding what somebody else, 300, 500, 1,000, 2,000, 10,000 years ago did. That's not how this magic, if you will, works. How it works is you being intuitive and sensing what the energies are doing right now, where you need to move right now, what you need to do right now, the rituals that you're being drawn to in this moment, the meditations and so on that you're being drawn to in this moment. It's alive, it's living, and it's a deep part of you. in a way that that's what we're learning to recapture. Okay, and that's why so many of the old ways passed away, because they got too rigid, they got too codified, and then they got too sort of captured by just a few people who we're the only ones that know how to do it, and we're not going to let anyone else know how to do it, and that's how these things die and they pass away. And that's so we need to not be too sad that some of these old ways have gone away and submerged and feel like they've died. We're bringing them back now. They needed to pass away so that they can now come back. This is Scorpio energy, and if you're following the movements of Pluto, Pluto is key to this time period. The whole last probably 10, 12 years, and will still be for the next 10, 12 years. Really key. It's all about death and rebirth, death and rebirth, death and rebirth, and this is actually the process of life. And we're bringing this stuff back up, but we're bringing it up for the now. What does it need to be now? And what we need to establish is practices that are open, that aren't closed down, that are not so much about encoding everything, and this is the one right way you do it because I'm the one who knows how to do it, and therefore you have to come to me because I know the magic words to say over you to make you feel better. No. It's about empowering individuals over their own lives. That's what's changing. Okay? And yeah. So with that, sending you all the love and peace and light that you can stand right now.